In this video, I'm going to teach you exactly what you should be focusing all, and I mean all of your energy on in fitness. This is not some sort of one weird trick sort of video or do this versus do that. This is, or this works better than that. Why are you doing that? This is a video that is basically going to outline how and what and where and how you should focus all of your energy onto, because if you're not focusing all of your energy into these things, the little details just don't seem to matter very much. So welcome to the video. My name is Billy. I own FlexEd Personal Training, which is a private personal training studio in Collingwood, Ontario, Canada. I help people get fitter and sexier and leaner and stronger. And I've been naturally bodybuilding and training for about 15 years now. So I've acquired a good amount of knowledge over that time. And today, basically, it's gonna be a little bit of a longer video because there's going to be a lot to dive into here. But basically what I'm gonna go through is an order of importance of what is the most important things that you should be focusing all of your energy on and what you should be putting aside until maybe you're more advanced or you've got the capacity to be taking on some of these smaller details. And basically kind of how to dial everything in and in that sort of level of importance. So basically how I'm gonna break this down. So we're gonna break this down into, if you can think of a big pie chart, okay? Maybe I'll put one on the screen here. But on this pie chart, I'm gonna try and break down the order of importance and how big of an impact different things have on your overall fitness. So that way you can kind of look at the big picture and say, okay, these are the big things that I need to focus all my energy on. This little thing right here probably doesn't matter all that much as the fitness influencers and whatnot will try and convince you that it's super important, this one small trick. So think of this pie chart for a second, and I'm gonna break down some percentages here and all of the topics that we're gonna go over. I'm only gonna go over the big stuff today, just the big stuff, just the big chunks of this pie chart, and that is it. But first I'm gonna break down what this pie chart looks like, how much I believe each thing has an impact on your overall physique, so that way you can kind of make your own determination here, hopefully in the same opinion as me, of what you should be focusing all of your energy on. So the first bit, you have to think of everything as like 100%, right? So there's 100% of a pie chart maybe over here on the screen. First thing, training. Training is the number one thing. This is gonna take up the most of your pie chart. And I have training at about 36% of your entire pie chart. It's a pretty precise number, but you know, through many mathematical calculations, a team of scientists, we were able to come up with this 36% number. That I believe training has about a 36% impact. So focusing your energy on your training. And we'll get into a minute what in the training to focus on. Next biggest thing, nutrition, about 34%. So I put that at ever so slightly, just ever so slightly below training. And the reason I did that is because even if you have a pretty crappy diet overall and you train hard, you'll still get some good results. So the nutrition, as well, like if you want to dial in the physique, dial in the training, that's where nutrition really comes in. So that is why I've ranked it just ever so slightly behind the training. The next most important thing that we're going to look at here in a minute, and this is going to take a big chunk of the pie chart, is going to be, I combine these two because they're kind of really, at the end of the day, they're really kind of do the same thing. And that is sleep and rest. And what that means is not just going to bed, but getting a good quality sleep and rest days, rest time to let things recover. That is going to take up about 15% of this pie chart. So do the math, we're somewhere like 40% total now or something like that, I don't know. And then the last one here is going to be stress. Stress, I'm gonna rank at about 10% of your overall. Stress is kind of the crappy one because at the end of the day, there's gonna be stressors. We're gonna have family, jobs, relationships, outside forces that are gonna stress us out. And we're gonna go over some ways on how to kind of deal with that, but stress is probably the one that is the most out of your control, and it does have a fairly big impact. But you can still build a really nice, well-rounded physique while being pretty stressed out. You still can, it's just gonna hold you back maybe 10%, I would say. So we're going to go into a deeper dive here of what all of these are and how to dial in each one to make sure you're getting the most out of it, how to make sure that you're actually focusing the right amount of energy into each of these big pieces of the pie chart. We're not really going to dive in, so I left, I think, about 5% or so on the table, which really kind of dials in everything else. And this is what I find a lot in the fitness industry, is they want to focus on these things. So we're talking everything from like meal timing to training timing, slight variations in movements. Oh, don't do it this way, you got to do it this way. If you don't do it at a 30% angle and you're doing it at a 32, your gains are ruined. Like, sure, it might be slightly more effective, whatever, but is it really going to put that much of, is it really going to be that much of a difference over the whole picture? Probably not. Other stuff like supplementation, things like one food versus another, you know, apples over oranges, whole foods versus processed foods, bad chemicals, food dyes, sugars, artificial sweeteners, you know, the list goes on, all these little things that they try and, this is ruining your gains because you had a packet of Splenda, oh, you know, stuff like that. We're gonna avoid all that today. In later videos, we can go in a little bit of detail to see why some of these things actually do matter, but they're not as important as what we're gonna go over today. That is the main thing. We've just got bigger fish to fry here. There's no point in sweating over the small stuff if you don't have the big stuff figured out. So let's actually talk about how to dial this in. And the first thing that we're really going to look at here is the training, the most important thing. We're going to start with the meat and potatoes right now and how to dial this in. So first is your scheduling. This is how you really dial your training in. So for your scheduling, what that means is you want to pick your days, okay? So depending on what your schedule is, you want to pick your least friction days. So I would start with a basic minimum of 2 days. Make sure that you can program at least 2 days into your week. And you know, if Sunday is that day where you've got the day off and it's easiest for you to train, Sunday's probably the day to go. Maybe you get off work early on Wednesdays. Sounds like a low friction day. Let's do Sundays and Wednesdays. Those would be your two least friction days that you're going to be able to adhere to the best. And this is going to help you with your consistency over the long term. So the first thing to dial in here is your scheduling. Let's pick your days. What days do I know that almost with no interruptions or any things are less likely to come up, and having those days spread out in a way that I can always move it to another day if I have to. The next thing to figure out as far as your training goes, your split. So what that means, your most common splits are usually something like a full body routine where you hit basically every muscle group in the body in one day. Excellent option, especially to save time, especially for beginners. I would say full body is a really good place to start. Another one would be an upper lower. So if you do lower body on one day, upper body on the next day, split it up that way, 2 days a week, you hit the whole body. Perfect. Really, really excellent split. Push-pull legs, one of my favorite splits, probably my favorite split. Actually, what I do right now, I just do push-pull legs and I repeat that basically twice a week. For me, that seems to work very, very well, something I could adhere to and I get really good gains out of it. Or if you want to get more advanced and get more into a more fracturalized split where you really split things up, where it's like I'm going to hit hamstrings and shoulders on this day. And you've really kind of got things dialed into that point because I know my hamstrings recover really fast so I can hit them 3 times a week. That's more advanced stuff. Don't worry about that. Pick a basic split, upper, lower, push-pull legs, or just a full body is a great place to start. I wouldn't get into the fracturalized stuff yet. That could be later when you're advanced. That's more for, as well, drug athletes, not so much for us natural guys. But let's get into the next most important thing as far as dialing in your training goes. The next most important thing I would say is after we've got our scheduling figured out and after we've got what kind of split we want to do, the next thing we're going to do is the exercise selection. So how should you select what exercises am I going to do? Well, it might depend a little bit on the split that you choose. So if you do a full body, one downside of full body routines is that when you do a full body, if you really want to hit all of the muscle groups and hit them effectively, then you've kind of you're going to be a little limited on your exercise selection. And this is fine as you're learning because you want to stick to those big compound lifts. But the main things that you want to focus on here when you're dialing in that split and that exercise selection is focusing on those compound lifts. So what do I mean by compound lifts? We're going to be talking about stuff like your bench presses. So that could either be with a barbell on a cable, or it could even be dumbbells. My personal favorite is dumbbells. Some sort of benching, and it could be at an incline or a decline, whatever you want to focus on. We want to hit like probably a pushing, a good horizontal laying push is one of those movements. The next movement, we want to hit some sort of rowing movement for the back, build that thickness in the back, some sort of row movement. I'd probably go, you can kind of switch it up, but just getting some sort of rowing movement. We won't get into all details of all the different grips and what they're going to do in this video, but some sort of rowing movement for your back, as well as some sort of pulling down movement, whether it's a lat pull down or a cable pull down of some kind. Works very, very well. So those are kind of like your two back fundamentals, making sure you're hitting those back fundamentals. And the last one's being a hinge movement, something like a deadlift, an RDL, something like that. You want to make sure that you're programming that in. And then something like a squatting movement, like a squat, essentially, a barbell squat, or a goblet squat, or a hack squat, or even a leg press if you're not really able to squat yet. You want to have something where you're basically compressing your legs and extending the legs in that sort of fashion. So focusing on those big core movements, they are going to be at the beginning of your training block, okay? So your training day. So you're gonna have your big bench exercise first, okay? Before you get into like your flies, okay? There's a reason why later we might want to do flies, we might want to do something else first, but as you're getting things dialed in, start with those big compounds, okay? That's what you want to make sure that you have. The next stuff to really focus on here is you really start to dial things in. One of the main fundamentals here is form, okay? Don't go blasting that weight up too quickly. If you go blasting that weight up too quickly, then what's going to happen if your form is not ready for that amount of weight, you're going to be more prone to injury. You're also not going to get as much out of the exercise. So spend a lot of time, watch videos, watch my videos as I put them up, watch other people's videos, watch what some of the more experienced people do in the gym. Most of us are very friendly in the gym too. We may not look like it, but you can even come up. I'm always really happy to help people with form. If you come up to me and ask, hey, how do I do this exercise? Would you mind showing me? I might need to take a minute, but yeah, let me do my set and then I'm gonna give you a quick demo, okay? It's not that I'm trying to brush you off, it's just I'm trying to do my thing at the same time, but I have no problem trying to help people. So learn the form. I'm gonna put it up here on the screen somewhere. Learn the damn form. Learn how to do this stuff properly, okay? That is one of the main things you need to focus on. After you really get that form dialed in, this is when you really start to focus on stuff like progressive overload, okay? Now, does your form have to be 100% perfect before you start progressive overloading? No, it does not. As long as it's pretty good, okay? You've got the basic fundamentals down. You know, if let's say, for example, if you're doing a squat and then your knee still has a little bit of a buckle in as you're doing that squat, just as an example, can you progressively overload? Of course you can, okay? It's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, but it's something you can kind of work on as you're progressive overloading. If you still got the hinge down, you're able to get good depth, it's probably good to start progressive overloading, but just make sure that you've got a pretty good setup on that form before you start trying to progressively overload. The last thing that here we need to look at, once you've got all this other stuff figured out, to really dial in this training, what you need to focus on is now your training periodization. And this comes later whenever you become more advanced at training. So what is training periodization? Training periodization, oh my God, I can't say it. I can't say it right now. Training periodization, maybe I'll just put it on the screen, I don't have to say it anymore, is basically breaking things up into blocks, okay? Our body does adapt a little bit to what we're doing, not entirely, but there is some adaptation, and this can kind of go from person to person as well, but if you find that you're stagnating on different exercises, this is where periodization comes into play, and periodization can be anything from changing rep ranges. Maybe for a little while you want to focus more on a strength rep range of like 5, 6 to 8 reps. somewhere around there, 3, 4, and really just kind of blast up that strength for a good 8, 12 weeks. So that way when you get back into the hypertrophy, the more 8 to 15-ish or a little bit beyond rep ranges, then you've got that extra strength. So periodizing your training, not just going all random all around the gym or different, oh, today I just feel like doing this amount of reps. No, you make sure that for a certain period of time, you have a focus of what you're doing, how many reps or what the goal is, and periodizing it. And doing that for a chunk of time, a good chunk of time. Most mesocycles, sometimes they're referred to as, last usually about 8 to 12 weeks. So set us a good block of 8 to 12 weeks. I'm gonna do this same routine. I'm gonna hammer away at it. We're gonna make this work, and we're gonna progress through this before I go and change the exercises. All right, now the next most important thing that we need to dial in as far as our pie chart goes. What is the next most important thing that we really need to work on here? Well, I already mentioned it earlier, it's nutrition. So how do you really start to dial this nutrition in? How do you make sure that 34% that I said in that pie chart is actually, you're using all 34% of that and getting all 34% of those gains out of that nutrition? Well, how we're gonna start to dial in our nutrition is one of the first things that I recommend, and this is what I always try and get my clients to do right away. Some are better than others. Okay, we're not gonna say any names here. We're not gonna call anyone out, but log your food, okay? Get an idea of what you eat every day, okay? And that can either be done, what I recommend is an app like MyFitnessPal. I've used it for 15 years. Works excellent. Or even, if you're working with an older client or something, sometimes the technology doesn't click with them. Even just like a diary, paper notebook works really, really well, but just logging what you ate in a day. Because that way it gives you gotta think of it like starting a budget, okay? How do you start a budget if you don't know how much money's coming in? You know what I mean? So you've gotta know, okay, well, what foods am I bringing in before I can make cutbacks or changes? You've gotta have some sort of data to look at here. So start logging using one of those apps and just get used to accounting your food. It doesn't have to be perfect at first. This is a skill. You get better at this, okay? It's just like anything else. The more you do this, the more you're gonna get better at it. So you're gonna kind of suck at it at first, okay? But just stick with it. It's gonna get easier. It's gonna get better. You're gonna get better at it. It's one of the most important skills that you can learn when you're trying to become fit or more fit, is knowing what's in your food because it has such a large impact. Now, as you're doing this, as you start logging and you really start to look into things, what you need to start doing next is making changes. So now we've got an idea of what we eat. Okay, so every day I have a coffee and it has 3 sugars and 2 milk or something in it, you know what I mean? Okay, well, that's probably a place that maybe we need to start looking at cutting back. Maybe we can start putting some sweetener in there. Maybe we can try and dial back maybe it's cream, okay? Maybe it's cream. Maybe we can put it to milk. Making just small changes. Don't go and overhaul your diet right away. 9 times out of 10, when people do that, they fail. It's just too much all right at once. Just make little changes, little thing right here. Whether it's portion sizes, whether it's taking out 1 sugar in your coffee, make little changes so we can dial it back and get it closer to that calorie goal that we're looking for, which we'll get into here in a second. So making those substitutions, some examples, common examples that I use when I'm working with clients and whatnot. Stuff like substituting sour cream, especially like your full fat stuff, either going down to like a lower fat sour cream or Greek yogurt. Using Greek yogurt instead of sour cream is gonna really crank up those protein numbers. Really, really good substitution. Basically substituting your sugars, start bringing in sugar-free stuff, stuff with sweeteners in it. So either add a sweetener to your coffee, 0-calorie drinks, Coke Zeros, Pepsi Zeros, Orange Crush Zeros. I have it in the fridge over there and I really want one, and as soon as I'm done this video, I'm grabbing one of those Orange Crushes, and I found 0-calorie ones, and man, they're good. More vegetables, more fruits, bringing in more vegetables, more fruits, eating out less, But most importantly, or one of the most important things anyway, is making sure that you really actually like what you're eating. Small changes and substitutions. So circling back to that, making sure that you're making these small changes, but that you can handle these small changes. If you're making changes that you don't like, do you really think you're gonna adhere to them? Probably not. Don't change them yet. Maybe substituting out something right now is too hard. Maybe 6 months down the road and you're starting to see results and everything's kind of coming together. Maybe then it's like, okay, well now I'm ready to get rid of this. So don't make too much changes all at once. As you become more and more versed at this, you'll become better and better at tracking your calories. Okay, and this is where that food log comes back into it, making sure that you're tracking those calories, making sure that you're knowing what's coming into that budget, making sure that you have an accurate idea. And this is something that gets easier over time. Maybe this will take you 8 weeks, 12 weeks to kind of get better at, but getting better and better at tracking those calories. So over this time, you want to make those small changes, get better at tracking those calories. Now, as you start to get better at tracking those calories and starting to hit that calorie goal that we want, I'm not going to go into detail here about calorie goals. It's just too much to get into. I'm going to do that in a totally different video. But once you start to hit that calorie goal, then we're going to add in the tracking of protein. Okay, we want to make sure we hit the protein. So calories kind of king, protein kind of right underneath it. We can worry about carbs and fats later. Start dialing in the protein, trying to hit that protein number every single day. At this point, you should also be starting to try and meal prep. Make sure that all of your meals are prepped, ready to go. This makes it way easier to adhere to. And this is something that at this point, when you're, maybe 3-6 months deep at this point, this is how you start to dial this in. Now I'm going to start meal prepping. Now we're going to start doing this. We're going to start eating these foods on repeat that are really, really good for me and really helping me hit my goals. And now that you're hitting those goals more accurately and consistently, like maybe 6 months down the road, you're hitting those goals really, really well. This is when we can start moving on to the carbs and the fats. Okay, now we're going to try and dial in those carbohydrates. Now we're going to try and dial in those fats. And the micronutrients. So this means your vitamin C's and your vitamin A's and your B12s and your omega fatty acids, all the micronutrients and whatnot, even though the omegas are actually a fat, not a micronutrient. But once you've kind of got this dialed in, this is when you start getting into the more nitty-gritty of the smaller things, sodium intake, stuff like that. And then once you start to do that, at this point, you should really be getting to a point where, maybe this is getting closer to the year mark. Maybe you've been training for about a year and tracking your calories, tracking your food for a year, and you're getting better and better and better at it. You should be about 95, I'd say, % dialed in. You can hit your calories within about 95% accuracy, 95% of the days. And if you can do that, which I imagine for most people will probably take around a year from what my experience, then at that point, you could probably consider now your nutrition is dialed in. Now you could start to look at some of like the minor stuff that we were talking about earlier, but not until you're about 95% dialed in. You're hitting those macros within 95%. 95% of the time, hitting those calories within 95% of the time, and hitting those micronutrients in about the same ballpark, 95% accuracy. Once you do that, you're dialed in. Now you can focus on the small stuff. Now on to the next topic here, which is sleep and rest. This one is very important. This is basically where all the muscle growth, all that hard work that you're putting into that training and all that hard work that you're putting into the nutrition, this is where the magic actually happens. Whenever you're training, that is not actually when the muscle growth occurs. This is only the stimulus for the muscle growth to occur. You still need to be able to rest and sleep in order for your body to be able to build that muscle that you're looking for, burn that fat that you're trying to get rid of. So this is a very important one, and as I said earlier, probably about 15% of the overall picture. You can still make excellent gains if you're getting really poor sleep and you are overtraining, but it will hold you back pretty considerably. So it is very important to dial in. And it can be a tricky one to dial in, especially for a lot of people. I've dealt with sleep issues myself over the years, from not being able to stay asleep all night to having trouble falling asleep, different stuff like that, depending on different periods of my life. And that's going to happen to other people out there too. That, sometimes it's easier said than done. But let's look at a few things that we can do to really kind of dial this sleep portion in, because it is so important. So one of the main things we want to focus on is, first thing is getting adequate amount of sleep. For most people, this is going to be somewhere in the 7 to 8 hours of good sleep, making sure that we're staying asleep for that period of time. And then how we're going to do that, making sure that we've got a good bedtime routine in place. Having a good comfortable place to sleep, make sure your bed is comfy, make sure you're not working in bed or anything like that. That is only where you go to sleep, so your body associates that with going to sleep. When you go to bed, you go to sleep. If I lay it down on my bed in the middle of the day, like I pretty much just go to sleep. That's that's just my body knows, like, oh, bed, sleep. So I don't really like laying down on my bed in the middle of the day. Some other things to deal with before you go to sleep is if you've got problems with hunger, which can happen sometimes if you're dieting down, so that might dial back into your food choices. Indigestion, so if you know certain foods are going to keep your stomach going and keep you upset all night, then probably avoid those. But this part gets a little personal. I'm more of the type, I could eat a big meal and pretty much just fall right asleep. It doesn't bother me. I don't wake up with indigestion. I don't have any of those problems, but I know a lot of people do. So you have to take this into personal account. If you know that if you eat a big meal shortly before bed, the 2-3 hours before bed, that you're going to be tossing and turning all night, well, you got to dial in your sleep. So maybe just don't do that. And same thing goes for hunger. If you know that if you don't eat right before you go to bed, then you're going to be laying in bed thinking about food and your stomach's going to be growling, then maybe you need to make sure that you're saving some calories right before bed to consume, so that way you can actually fall asleep well. Getting into the rest portion, it's very important that you're taking time to veg out, okay? The growth really happens when you're sleeping and when you're not really doing much at all. So take some time, slow down. If you're one of those people that's got to move around all the time, just slow down, chill, watch a movie, play a game, read a book, go lay outside for a while. This is when you let your nervous system calm down. This is when you let the muscle actually build. This is when you let things actually recover. It may seem counterintuitive sometimes, but it's very, very important to your overall growth. It's really good for your recovery. It's great for your nervous system. It's really good for your joints. Lay off them once in a while. Weight training can be very tough on joints and tendons, so giving them time to heal and recover. I find this happens a lot when people are doing weight training and they're doing like a lot of sports at the same time, that it really starts to compact and add up on them. So taking that time to veg out, making sure your sleep is adequate and enough and some decent quality is going to help get you that 15% gains out of that pie graph. And the last topic here we're going to talk about, the big one, probably the hardest one to dial in, and this is going to be, again, very, very personal, because everyone's got their own stuff going on in their lives. Some people have not much going on, and other people deal with stress in different ways. Some people, things bounce off them. It's nothing, no problem. Other people, little things just stress them out. So we're going to look at a few ways that we can kind of dial this stress in, so that way we can get the most out of that kind of 10% chunk of your training. So this block of stress and really dialing it in is still pretty important, but as I said, this is where it kind of gets into the personal stuff. So as I was saying, different people have different stressors, right? Jobs, kids. So let's just focus on what we can control. That's kind of one of the most important things, is let's just focus on what we can actually control here. Don't get too focused on these things. You can't change if your boss decides that, he's going to change some policies. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't control other people's actions. You can't control how they interact with you. You have to only focus on the things you control. And I'm not some sort of therapist or anything like that, so I'm not going to try and get into that type of stuff. But general advice is focus on the things you can control. and try to steer away from the things that are just, stay with politics, stuff like that. Try and not consume that stuff so much. It will only stress you out and you have no control over it. Mental health is very often overlooked as part of your overall fitness and your health. Mental health is very, very important when it comes to that. If you're mentally healthy at the same time, it can really also help you get physically healthy at the same time. They really kind of yin and yang together pretty well. The more physically healthy you get, the more it starts to help your mental fitness, and then your mental fitness starts to help your physical fitness. So these kind of things really do bounce off each other pretty well. And they work in harmony pretty well. And a lot of people in the fitness industry don't really talk about that side. It's pretty overlooked. So this is where stress is really important to manage. Your health is your wealth, after all, and sometimes a healthier body can produce better results for you a healthier mind can produce better results for you to help you get a healthier body in the gym. Another way to think of it is gives you, a little bit more money in the bank, I guess, to work with as far as like your capacity to deal with things. But yeah, as I said before, let's just not sweat the small stuff. And kind of that stress as well. I know this is why I kind of wanted to save stress for last as well, because a lot of people get too stressed out about all these little details, and they see all this little stuff in the fitness industry, and they go, well, I don't know what fruits to eat, and I don't know what meats to eat, and I don't know, is my sodium too high, and I don't know if I'm drinking enough water, and I don't know, and they don't know all this. Focus on those big parts of the pie chart, okay? If you're stressed about apples over oranges, okay, but you're not hitting your protein and your calories, you're stressed about something that really doesn't matter at the end of the day or has little to no impact on your overall progress when you're ignoring the thing that has a huge impact on your progress. Don't worry about those small things. So one way I kind of like to describe this to people is this whole picture. So let's take it all back to this whole picture. Let's take the training, the nutrition, the sleep, the rest, and the stress. Let's bring it all back here into one picture. And I like to say this whole thing, imagine it as a structure, okay, that you are trying to build. And the training and nutrition are basically two big pillars, okay? Or what's going to hold, they're like the meat of what's going to hold up that structure. And then you've got your stress and your sleep and your rest kind of on top. They're kind of like holding the top of the structure together at the top, but they don't hold it from falling. That's what the training and nutrition does. They hold the top of the structure together. And too many people get worried about the little things. So, I'm worried more about the texture of my structure. Well, your structure's falling down. Why do you care about the texture? Why do you care what color it is if it's falling down? Why do you care what decorations you're going to put on it if it's toppled over and fallen on the floor? Let's get the pillars, training and nutrition, up. Let's get the floor, the stress, the sleep, everything kind of sorted out. Then once you've got a solid structure, then you can really start focusing on those minor details and really make it better overall. So try not to sweat the small stuff. I really hope this helps some people out there. If this is your first time to the channel, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope I can help some people out there. Hit the like button, subscribe button. It really helps me grow. Leave a comment down there if you have any questions or if you need any help with anything. And if you're really knowledgeable, let's build a little bit of a community here. Get down there, help some gym newbies. Let some people know what's going on. Let's try and fight the spread of internet bullshit and the algorithm that goes on, where everyone's just trying to fear-monger each other into getting views. Let's try and build something well down here. But I thank you all very much for tuning in today, and I will catch you on the next video. Take care.